Warning, the following video contains massive spoilers for Better Call Saul. If you haven't caught up with it or watched any of it, I recommend you do not watch this video, unless you really want to. In that case, enjoy.
Better Call Saul has become one of the most popular TV shows in recent times, and not without reason. Of course, jumping off from the success of Breaking Bad helped, but it would never have been as big and as well regarded as it is today if it couldn't stand on its own 2 feet as well. And stand it has, and even more so, surpassing, to many, even the success of Breaking Bad itself in a lot of ways, with its complex characterizations, themes, and ideas presented, and managing through these to keep the engagement up through what should be on paper a rather docile story about a flawed but up-and-coming lawyer lawyering about and Breaking Bad. But if you think that all this could just be imagined up and written by Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould on their own, you'd be severely mistaken. For as any great story through history, it takes a lot of inspiration from previous masterworks for its solid characters and themes. You've probably given the dichotomy between Chuck and Jimmy some thought in this regard before, as it's not exactly the first time such a conflict has been depicted in history. But where from could they have drawn such inspiration for this ethical and philosophical feud? Could it be in the classic law dramas of old that are peppered throughout the show? Or perhaps a single or several real-life stories of lawyers and their relationships? Well, in my research and detailed look at the show, it is blitheringly obvious where the roots of Better Call Saul spring from. The American Revolutionary War. Now, you may be thinking, but Blop, how could such a critical historical war constitute the bickering of some lawyers in a modern-day TV show? Well, I'll be happy to tell you. It all revolves, you see, around the principles of Chuck's, Jimmy's, and several other characters' disagreements. To understand why this is, we first have to look at the Revolutionary War itself. So, what was the Revolutionary War about? Why did it break out in the first place? While you can always list a great number of factors for why historic events happen, in this case new taxes on tea and sugar, the mercantilist system of trade prohibiting trade with countries outside the British Empire, the colonials wanting westward migration against previously signed treaties with the natives, encroaching British control, and everything else the 7 Years' War brought with it to the general colonialist mindset at the time, all of these factors can more or less be boiled down to a single reason. The phrase you hear on and on again in the writings and talkings of this time. No taxation without representation. For it wasn't so much all these measures that plagued the Founding Fathers, as the fact that they couldn't legally do anything about it through their own representation in the British Parliament. This, in their minds, forced their hands, and the occasional skirmish between local militias and the British Army at the time didn't really help this. In effect, they were in their own minds being denied their due rights as Englishmen, by not being represented in Parliament and having a say in the rules that the British Prime Minister and government laid on them. All that's fair enough, but how does any of this relate to the conflicts of Better Call Saul in any way? Well, just as the colonialists were refused their due rights as Englishmen, so too is Jimmy refused as being a real lawyer by his own brother, despite in all official and proper ways being so. Something that both sours relations and sparks their own little conflict between them. You didn't think that Chuck brings up the Magna Carta all the time without reason, did you? Or the fact that Jimmy's most famous commercial ends with him standing afore the American flag all patriotically? Of course not. It is only to show off and make this connection to the British Empire in North America even clearer. That is coincidentally why Chuck is so big on the rule of law as well, as he does not want to throw away that which is already proven, much like how Britons are famously conservative with their institutions, while at the same time, from this initial conflict, Jimmy's moral compass grows to embrace unorthodox and frankly dangerous ways of practicing laws, both for himself, his clients, and those closest to him, being an allegory for the new and uncharted path the new American nation walked down, both in its presidential system as well as all the new settlements and frontiers that lay ahead now that they got their self-determination in order. And while we're on the subject of the rule of law, it is not just the way in which Chuck is rather conventional in his practice that makes his parallels to British America more apparent, but also the fact that this makes him stick to, well, the written law. This also reflects British rule in many ways. Signing and keeping their treaties with the natives for one, as the British and Canadian conquest of the northern bit of the continent have been through way less wars and bloodshed and broken treaty, and far more by actual standing and binding treaty than their southern counterparts. Does this justify these exploitative treaties and further crimes committed towards the natives? No. But much like Chuck himself, it is the principle of the law that is being followed that outweighs everything else, and in that sense, it fits British North America to a T.
Pun very much intended.
And it's not only in that way that Chuck represents the lesser of two evils. For not only does Jimmy's new and less than legal methods result in misery for those he wrongs along the way, like letting a cartel member escape justice for his murder, only to go on to murder even more people afterwards, so too did the revolutionaries' carelessness with their treaties and land settlement pave the way to outright genocide. In comparison to these crimes, Chuck's actions are nothing more than just cold or rude, and nothing but, if only with a slight hint of madness every now and then, as our dear George III did showcase as well. Moreover, the revolutionaries' insistence and hellbentness on their new experimental system only led to more misery in the colonies through the horrors of unnecessary war, as well as the rampant inflation it brought on in the years after the war. In both of these examples, it is clear that Jimmy's and the revolutionary struggle only leads to more overall misery, making it clear that Chuck and the British Empire clearly are morally, ethically, and legally in the right, even if they do seem cold and uncaring. But the final point that makes this allegory clear is the help both Jimmy and the revolutionaries receive in their fight against their perceived foe, France in the case of the Patriots, and Kim Wexler on the side of Jimmy. For it is clear throughout Better Call Saul that Jimmy could not have stayed a lawyer, or even win the court battle against his brother, were it not for the help and support Kim provided, be it through her representing him, or helping him plead his case to the New Mexico bar. In a similar manner, the aid of friends, both military and financially, was absolutely vital to the success of the revolution, and in both of these cases, those who helped them would end up in ruin because it makes them realize something is utterly broken within themselves, be it the revolution and the bloodletting to come in France, or realizing that you'd fit best in Florida, in Kim's case. They both get aid from, and doom, their partners in crime. In conclusion, I think the main point to get out of both of these cases, and this clear inspiration in general, is that even though you may feel wronged by those around you, be it your peers or superiors, acting purely out of emotion in response will only lead to ruin. It is only natural to have such emotions, as we clearly see in young men in particular, and they're often seen bloodlust in societies that are full of them. The cheering crowds across Europe at the start of World War I comes to mind. But acting out and putting principles aside to let these negative emotions consume you will only lead to more misery. As with Jimmy's case, it led to him becoming a despicable criminal, as well as wronging too many innocent people to count and causing untold misery through his actions. And with a new American nation, well...
I'm about to show you a dirty secret of mine. I've got Priuses for everybody, every budget, all run good. Come and get one. Slide in my DMs if you're looking for a fuel-efficient car.
And clearly, that's what Vince Gilligan ultimately wanted us to get out of the show. To look to history, and the American Revolutionary War in particular, in order not to repeat it. And with that, I think my arguments have been pretty conclusive, and I don't see them being disputed anytime soon. but you're welcome to try if you want to, in the comment section below. To these last cheerless marches, send him like a ball between arches, a very lowness with a head in a sling. I'm truly sorry, but it seems like a wonderful thing. I said, Charles, don't you ever crave